Hi, my name's Kevin Stolla. This is my podcast, Vote Your Conscience. Welcome to the show. I'm happy to have you here. I'm just getting back into this again. It's been a while since I recorded an episode, and it was even longer before I recorded that last one. I am trying to come back, make one of these every 2 weeks to 1 month. I am still very busy with my window cleaning business, of course, but I'm getting that more on track, and hopefully I'll have more time for the podcast here. So what I want this podcast to be about is trying to bring people together to have an understanding, or at least try to understand what people on either side of the political spectrum believe and why they believe it. So I have kind of an outsider's perspective. I don't take part in either one of the major parties, the Democrats or the Republicans. If I had to put myself in a category, it would be closest to a libertarian ideology. But the main purpose of this podcast is what I'm starting to call like political self-help. So there's a major problem right now where people, they seem to be, identifying with their political views so much that they can't really even listen to someone else's opinion, even when they're friends with that person or that person is part of their family. And where I want us to get to is to be able to have some conversations. Some people do this decently well, but everyday people are having arguments over things that they don't really have too much control over. And that's where I've been getting. I lived a lot of my life with a lot of resentments towards what the government was doing all the time, and basically, thinking that people who opposed my view were the reason it was happening. And a lot of it, is that, but it's not that those people want the negative outcomes to happen. It's more that they have a different understanding of how to get there. And a lot of what's happening now is that people are really putting the blame on the other individuals. It's either people are picking that, the billionaires run the world or the government runs the world, and, we need to fight one or the other or pick sides with one or the other. People say all sorts of stuff to me online when, I'm pushing that we need to take our power back from the government, and the billionaires aren't really the main problem. I do believe that the money that's involved in politics and getting people elected is a major problem, but also both parties seem to be claiming that our elections are full of fraud and just aren't real. Well, I don't actually believe that. I do think that there's some election fraud, but it doesn't seem like it would push it one way or the other. About a third of the population, the voting population, doesn't even vote. The other people, when you talk to them, most of them either are going to vote Democrat or Republican. So in the way that a lot of people say that it's rigged, for one party or the other, it doesn't really make sense, because when you talk to people who are the voters, they do vote for one or two, or one of the two main parties. So why would they have to rig it where the election's actually fake when you only get two options and everyone picks from one? So in my opinion, I see online all the time that people say voting doesn't matter, and voting, we can't vote our way out of this. I don't exactly agree with that. I do believe that the voting's a problem. One of the main reasons that I don't believe that we can vote our way out of it is because people's belief system really just traps them that our only option is to vote for one of the two major parties. And it doesn't give us a pathway of getting an independent candidate, a third party candidate, or someone who isn't put on the main ticket as a nominee. So one of the things that I advocate for is to just vote your conscience. That's the entire title of this podcast. And I don't mean vote for a third party. Don't choose the Green Party candidate. Don't choose the, independent candidate. Don't choose the Libertarian candidate, the, Forward Party, whatever other parties are out there. I'm telling you to pick who you actually like. Now go out and watch these candidates debate, listen to their videos, listen to their campaign speeches, and pick who you like and just vote for that person. Even if they're not on the ticket, write them in. If there's a Democrat, and so basically, right now Donald Trump's the president. In the last election cycle, Joe Biden was, automatically the nominee because he was the president until they swapped him out for Kamala Harris last minute, after the debate he had with Donald Trump. But most of the election cycles, one of the parties or the other is having these primaries, and they're having debates within their own party. Whoever gets nominated, you don't have to vote for that person. You could still choose the second one, third one, fourth one, whoever you like. The problem is that everybody convinces each other that the only way to get your party or your way is to go with the main nominee of either party. So either who is the incumbent president, which they're automatically elected by their party if they're eligible to rerun, and or to pick the nominee of the opposing party. We don't actually have to do that. We can vote for whoever we like in this country. No one does because they're too scared that they're going to lose to the other party. The government, the media, they really promote this, okay, that this idea that if the other party wins, it's the end of the world, okay? It never has been in the past. So in this country, we're still existing here. I would say we have a decent standard of living. A lot of people might argue with me on that, and we are struggling financially. I know a lot of people who are struggling financially. I have been for years. One of the things, though, is that we all still have a pretty decent standard of living in America. I mean, I was at a food bank just last week, passing out food, helping to load trucks for local volunteers who were going and distributing food in a city near me, Pontiac, Michigan. And, we don't have people starving here. We do have enough resources, and we have a lot of people who are willing to help. This is just in a local city. This is one nonprofit, and we had, 20 people there volunteering to help get food to people in need just in the local, city there. There's these nonprofits all over the place. We have food pantries near us. I'm lucky in this area that we do live in a wealthy county, but most counties have a lot of these different food pantries and stuff. So we do have a pretty decent standard of living, and we have a lot of charitable people that are willing to help out those in need. But so it hasn't been the end of the world for either of these parties being elected. I believe that the parties mostly work together. There's a class of elite people. Some of them are billionaires. Some of them are lifelong politicians. They're high up in government organizations. They're in international, government organizations, international, charity organizations, non-governmental organizations. And they work together in some ways just to keep their power. And it's heading in one direction. And I don't know if it's, more conspiratorial, which I do lean towards. It makes things simpler if people are trying to manipulate it in the way that screws over, the individual, and gains them power. But I believe that a lot of these people, they just really believe in government power, and they're willing to promote it over and over because they see something bad happening, and they say, we need an organization to do something about this. Okay, it's the same thing as, you see a robbery taking place and you go, we need police to do something about this. We need the police because there is a criminal thing happening. So it's almost instinctual to want there to be some kind of power, an authority that can help and shut down things that you don't want to see happening. Okay. For me, I would like our government to have as little authority as possible. I believe in law enforcement, and I believe that they're important. But on a major scale, the federal government, the state government, having control over little elements of everybody's lives, and control over what businesses do, what individuals choose to do. So many people just want to go, okay, this company's doing something. We need a law. You need a law about everything. There's thousands of laws now. And what they really do is they give more power to the people who have to carry out those laws. My goal would be for people to claim more responsibility and to be enacting their own power in their life. It's very difficult to do so when the government has so many laws and restrictions. And for the individual to believe that the government is taking care of them. So now a lot of people do believe that there are problems with, the EPA, the FDA, the USDA. I mean, really every major federal organization. But even to the point where they think that it may be having a negative impact. I've thought this for basically since I can remember, since I was a teenager 20 years ago. But most people put a lot of trust in those government organizations then, and it's slowly been eroding. But a lot of people still, they want to fix the organizations instead of us getting rid of the organizations, taking responsibility for ourselves, and choosing which companies that we're going to patronize. Okay. So this is what the point of my podcast is to vote with your dollars, vote at the polls, and then voting on, choices in your own life. So that's where it comes to the political and the self-help, self-improvement merging together. Whereas I want to see people taking care of their own lives so that they have the power. They feel empowered. Okay, I can take care of myself. I don't need the government's power. So I'm not going to clamor for the government to try to do everything, to take care of me, to take care of my neighbors, to fix every little problem that there is. Because where that leads is the government having this infinite control, where the problem is they're just as corruptible as any of the businesses that are going to pollute the rivers or pollute your food, or put out a medication that's going to hurt people, even if they know it's going to hurt people, and hide those studies, and they're going to make billions of dollars off of it. And they're going to build up a fund and protect themselves. Even if there's a lawsuit against them, they'll still end up profiting, and they won't care. They'll just do it again. People think the government is going to fix these problems, but they haven't been able to. I don't even believe that they want to. They're the ones who are protecting these corporations and these industries. They absorb our tax dollars, and then they give them out to these corporations too, through grants and subsidies, government contracts, all sorts of things like that. And it really gives them the ability to collaborate with the billionaire ruling class, like what people want to say. It's the billionaires who are, the real problem. We need the government to stop the billionaires. I believe they're similar. Okay, they're a power structure, and they both want us to have less power. I don't believe that about all billionaires, all multimillionaires. A lot of them are really just for free trade, and they a lot of them still are going to act in their own interests, especially since the government is, already in power. It's not like, they go, okay, so people say, Elon Musk takes government money. So that means that, he's a shill for the government. Well, it either means that, or it means that he's going to use the system that's already set up. Okay. Just because I don't believe in a welfare program, or if I think that you don't think that there should, or if you don't believe that there's, in a welfare program, I wouldn't say, hey, you're a hypocrite if you use that welfare program that's literally already in place. You've already paid tax dollars into that welfare program. It doesn't mean that you have to change your view and now be for the welfare program, even if it's helped you, because they've already taken your money for that. So why would you not use it? That's one of the systems where people say, these billionaires take the subsidies, so they must be for them. Well, they may be for them because they're there and available, but their opinions might still be that the government shouldn't be funding this, and we should let the free market decide what products are produced, and let the consumers decide, because at the end of the day, it's going to be whoever's purchasing the product that's giving that power to the corporations. So basically, that's my opinion on how the government and these corporations interact. And I want us to individually take our power back by buying the products that we believe in, supporting the companies we believe in, supporting the charities, and supporting the candidates that we believe in. That's just one of my opinions. That is what this podcast is about. I believe that people feel very powerless these days. And I've felt that way before when you see, wars being started out of your control, issues like governments allowing, the poisoning of entire cities, like in Flint, Michigan, with the water crisis, different things like in Hawaii, where there's massive fires and people's houses burning down, and they don't send the relief that you need. They're giving $700 payments to people who lost their house, the government, the federal government, while they bail out a corporation for billions of dollars who mismanaged their own company. So I do understand feeling powerless in the face of some of this, but if we don't take that individual power back for ourselves, they will just keep doing whatever they want, and you'll keep voting or not voting, even worse, but voting for candidates you don't truly believe in, or just not voting because you believe that it's not even worth it to vote. And I'm not just talking about in presidential elections either. There's a lot of elections people don't even vote in. I mean, you get 15%, 20%, 30% turnout in some of these local elections. And I mean, that's terrifying. These local elections and local votes for different laws, I mean, these are going to affect your life more than most laws coming out of Washington. Some of the laws out of Washington, obviously, are going to have a huge impact on the entire country. But most of them you're not going to see in your day-to-day life like you will different ordinances and laws, bills, how the money's being used in your own county, in your own city. So this is one of the ways that you can take your power back and just go vote. I mean, it doesn't take very long. You have a vote once a year, once every 2 years, once every 4 years. Sometimes they'll get a special election or whatever. But these things don't take long. You obviously, if you're watching this, you want to be an informed citizen. So you're probably paying attention to some of the stuff that happens locally or statewide, nationwide. But, doing that due diligence and finding the people that you actually want to be in these positions of power, that we're granted that power by living in this country. And I believe that we should use it, just like we should use our dollars to vote for the products and the companies that we want to see. So I just wanted to get back into this because I've covered a lot of this in past episodes, but like I said, it's been a really long time, so I'm just trying to get back into this. And I do have a couple, ideas that I'm going to be trying going forward, because I do want to have some guests on here. But I'm also thinking I'm going to have some of these discussions, since we do have the ability to create, different AIs, AI agents, AI minds to have these discussions with. I would like to make an entire series where I discuss this on, my different positions with different AIs that are, have these different viewpoints, such as a socialist viewpoint or a libertarian viewpoint, and they can have differing opinions. We can have a little AI debate series. So I think I'm going to try that out and see how that goes too. And then we'll get some guests on here, and I'll also do solo episodes as well, and just talk about different topics. So that's just a brief, overview about what I'm trying to do with this podcast. And I would like to have a different topics on the podcast most of the time. So one of the things that I was seeing, this isn't just like a current events show. I more want to evaluate the systems overall so that people can have a better understanding of it, because there's a ton of different current event shows with an opinion. They're going to just yell about, what Donald Trump's doing, or doesn't. From the other side, they're going to yell about what Joe Biden's doing. They're going to yell about what any of the people are doing, what's happening in the government right now, the war with Iran. There's tons of people talking about these things already. I'm trying to look at the overall picture and see what we can do about these things. Okay, so, if you're not for a war in Iran, then we need to figure out who has the power to start wars. Okay, so this has already changed. The President Bush started, a war without Congress's approval, and that used to not be okay. But they used these emergency power acts. My opinion is that we take our power back and we don't let them make these types of decisions lightly. These are the kinds of things that I want to talk about, is how we can solve these problems systematically, because everyone getting all pissed off and yelling about this different current event, on a daily basis, it's not helping anybody. And that's where I'm trying to go with more of a, self-help type political ideology. Help yourself and get rid of the outrage. Stop looking at the day-to-day events and start figuring out what solutions you can be a part of. I'm not going to single-handedly stop wars from happening or anything. I'm not going to single-handedly stop all the subsidies that I hate seeing going to corporations, all of the grants and all of the bailouts that have happened in the past. I'm not going to stop these things single-handedly, but if more people can start to understand, if we take the power from the government, from the corporations, put it back in our own hands, we have that power. People just don't believe it, so they let these organizations, the government, whether it's government or corporation, they only have the power that we give to them. That includes the individuals that work at those organizations. We lend our power to these organizations, and then they use it, and they can either help us, they can use it against us. There's everything in between. But so that's what I want this podcast to be about more, is systematically, how do we change things? How do we make things better? How do we get more power into the hands of the people? That's what I care about. I am somewhat of an individualist, but I think that our society should work together. Of course, it's just when you say a word like collectivism, then people think socialism, communism. But I believe in working together as a community. But at the end of the day, I believe in the individual sovereignty, because if you don't have that, you never get to decide what to do yourself. And on a society-wide scale, that destroys all of our sovereignty, and it gives power to a large, just massive organization that's going to decide everything for us. Because if you don't have that choice yourself, and your neighbor doesn't have that choice themselves, the entire group loses its autonomy. So here's one example before I close up for this week of what I'm talking about. So I was on Facebook. I like to see different posts, read some different comments, waste my time on there more than I should, just like most people. And I keep seeing this thing over and over again about it's arguments about minimum wage. It's arguments about businesses paying a living wage, okay, whatever that means to you, because everyone has a different view of what that would mean. So here's a theme that I see over and over again, and it's that If a business can't afford to pay a living wage, then it doesn't deserve to exist. Okay. The argument goes this way, that if minimum wage is raised too high, then small businesses won't be able to afford. It's not about just paying the minimum wage, it's about paying what wages are going to be required if minimum wage is raised. Because if minimum wage is raised, then everybody who makes more than minimum wage right now will believe that they should be being paid more because now the minimum has been raised. A lot of small businesses pay less than large corporations. This can be based on what they afford. This can be based on the owner's personal, how they attract people, how they keep people who, maybe they do use people. Maybe they're a good person and they overpay their employees. Okay. All of these situations exist. Not every business owner is some horrible monster just looking to exploit people. Most business owners are small local businesses. There's 33 million businesses in the United States. Many of them are single person businesses, 2 people, 3 people, 5 people, 10 people. And not all of them are just these horrible owners that are trying to make as much as possible. They're trying to make a living. They're trying to help their employees make a living. But there is a balance, of course. As a business owner, I can't just pay my employees any amount in the world. My business has to face the competition of other window cleaning companies in my market. But the argument that if a small business can't pay a living wage, then they don't deserve to exist. Here's my take on that. So let's go with a hypothetical. Okay, there's a business, and what they want to do is try to help, youth get experience, and they also want to make a profit doing. You could really pick anything: lawn care, window cleaning, something pretty simple that someone young could do, 16, 17, 18 years old. Okay. What they want to do is they're going to pay a pretty low wage. Okay. And they're going to charge less than the other companies. So let's use the example of a window cleaning company. We're going to hire young people, ages 15, 16, 17, 18, maybe up to 21, let's say. They're going to be paid a lot less than some of these other companies that are more professional. Okay, they have experienced window cleaners that have been doing it for 5 years, 10 years. These are people ages 25 to 30, 40 years old. Okay, they have a ton of experience in the industry. They're going to be able to efficiently clean all these windows, and they're going to do a great job at the same time. Okay, so in my example, we're getting young people experience at the company. I'm going to charge a lower rate. Okay. And I'm going to be able to do that because I'm paying these young people less than I'm going to pay professionals that have a lot of experience. We're going to use this to get homeowners that can't afford as much. They might still want a professional cleaning, but they're willing to, take a few streaks on the windows and have a substandard job, and they don't mind. They feel good that they have some kids, some 16-year-olds, 18-year-olds that are getting work experience, on the job experience. They're learning how to do customer service. They're learning how to put in a hard day's work, and they're not going to be paid at the same rate as someone who's 25 who has 5 years experience doing this job. When you say a living wage, that could really mean anything. We have to dictate what a minimum wage, when they say a minimum wage should be a living wage, what a living wage would mean. What size house do you get? What type of car do you get? What type of food can you eat? So when people say people need to, a living wage would be you get housing, shelter, and food. It's like, okay, so, well, what does your shelter look like? Is that a 1,500 square foot house, or is that a 600 square foot apartment? What does the food look like? Are you eating ramen and, canned food, TV dinners, or is this high-end organic food, or is this eating out at a nice restaurant? For your clothes, Are you going to the Salvation Army and the Goodwill and getting your clothes? Or are you going to, these higher end clothing stores and buying brand new jeans and, shirts, dress shirts? What does clothing mean? Okay. When people talk about affordability like that and what people deserve, there's a wide range of it. And I believe that the free market dictates it the best. And I don't believe we live in a free market because our government puts tons of controls and restrictions on this that gives advantages to large corporations. But so in this example, my company is going to provide a cheap service. Okay, it's going to be substandard. That's how prices work. Okay, you're gonna buy the lower quality thing and it's gonna be cheaper. That's what this example is of a window cleaning company that's using young people with very little job experience. They're getting these benefits. Okay, the benefit isn't just they're getting paid. Okay, a lot of these people are young. They're going to be still living with their parents. They're trying to get their life together, their life started. Okay, so they're going to get a job. They're doing window cleaning and they're going to be paid less than the professional. This is going to provide a low cost service to customers that can't afford the higher end window cleaning service. Do you think that we shouldn't be allowed to do that? You don't think that should exist because anybody who works a 40-hour work week deserves a living wage, meaning that they can get their own house, their own car, their own cell phone, their own food, their own clothes, everything like that. The problem is that a 15-year-old, 16-year-old, 17-year-old, 18-year-old, most of them aren't going to be able to provide enough value. So in order to have a house and a car and a cell phone and food and clothes, other people have to do things to make that happen for you. They have to build you a house. Someone had to build that apartment building. Someone has to grow that food, drive it around to the grocery store for you. Okay, so your value has to equal out to all of the things that you get. Someone who's 15 years old cleaning windows very inefficiently, they're right now they're gaining skills. Okay, I get people on a crew sometimes, some young people. Okay, 18 years old, 20 years old. They don't know how to roll up a garden hose right. They haven't been taught these things. They haven't had a job. They need time to learn. They can't just jump in. It takes time. The company has to put input into them to get them to build this skill. They're getting a valuable skill by learning how to talk to customers in their homes, work with another crew on a team or a crew member on a team. They're learning how to drive vehicles properly. They're learning how to use different equipment. They're learning how to purchase things from the store, how a company operates, what's actually going on in the world and how a business works. Their value is just going to be less. It's not going to be enough for them to get their own home and support a family. By the time they're 18, 19, if they had started working early at 15, 16, 17, then maybe they are getting to that point where they can now get a small apartment or something. But when people say, they should be able to afford their own home, okay, well, it's going to depend on what that means. And that's the same thing. So everybody has to gain these skills. There has to be enough value for you to be provided for. Okay. And that's one of the situations, that's why I believe in the free market and freedom for companies and people to compete. You can come up with this idea, okay, I'm going to help young people because there wasn't companies that would hire me, okay, when I was 15, right? It was hard to find a job because no one wants an inexperienced 15-year-old. So this company is going to provide that to those 15-year-olds. It's going to provide a low-cost window cleaning service to people who can't afford the more professional companies. And it's going to be cheap. It's not going to provide a living wage. Do you think that the government should block that from happening and make that illegal? That's what some of the people want. Basically, when they say they want, a $25 minimum wage or something, a living wage for everybody. I do believe we have plenty of resources for everyone to be fed and housed and clothed. We're amazing at producing products now. We have machines that are, the productivity has been like times 100-fold over the last 100 years on some of these things of producing clothing, producing homes, and different things like that, necessities that we have. So I do believe that there is, enough resources for us to take care of everybody. But there also is a problem of we can't just pay people whatever we think that, a living wage would be, and everybody gets a house and a car and nice food and, everything like that. So I just wanted to give that example out there of, do you believe that that business shouldn't exist because they can't pay a living wage? Or do you think people should be able to decide if they want that product, that service, and the individuals who are going to work there? Do they have their own sovereignty to decide, okay, I'm going to go and work this job. Okay, I'm 15. No one really is going to believe in me that much because I don't know what I'm doing yet. I've just been in school. I've never had a job. I'm just starting out in life. I'm going to accept this position so that I can gain some experience. And when I'm 18 and I already have 3 years under my belt and I'm feeling a little more confident about what I can do, I can go into an interview and I can be proud of what I did the last few years, even though I didn't get paid that higher wage. And now I can start my life out, asking for a higher wage and feeling confident about what I can do at that point. And so what I'm really saying in that instance is that I believe people have the personal sovereignty and autonomy to make these decisions on what's going to benefit them. And if they want to work for that company for that wage, that's up to them. If the company is offering this wage and no one accepts it, that company goes out of business because no one will work for them. So it is a back and forth, and sometimes employers have more of an advantage depending on the market, and sometimes employees have a larger advantage in the market. That's how the free market solves these problems. It's very basic in our economics. And most people have really forgotten how it works, and they just want the government to fix it. And it's on both sides. I mean, it's, the Republicans, they want all these advantages to go to corporations from the government. And on the liberal side, they want all this money to be funneled to people for some reason. Like we shouldn't have our own money to take care of ourselves. We should just have enough money. We should be able to earn a living and live off of it. We shouldn't need the government to provide food stamps and healthcare and all this stuff. I believe that we should be paid a good wage, and I do believe in some amount of welfare as well, which I've talked about many times. If you go back on any of my episodes, there's an entire episode about welfare and how I think that system should function. But it can't just be, we need more money. We have to take more money, put it into the government, and then now you give it to poor people for some reason. Why are the people poor? That's what this podcast is about. How do we stop the people from being poor in the first place so that we can live our lives? That's the same thing going back to all the systems that I'm talking about and self-help, people being able to understand this so that we can create good lives for ourselves. And I'm going to end on that. So just trying to give examples here, I'll be doing that a lot, different hypothetical examples of situations where people think the government forcing their will, like a living wage, a minimum wage raise. This is government enforcement. It's more power to the government, less individual choice. So I'm for us having more individual choice. One of the things I want in this podcast to come from this podcast is people being able to discuss these without thinking that you're trying to harm them. Okay, that one side is trying to harm the other side. Instead of, we are collaborating, we're trying to figure this out, and we're coming up with solutions and trying to meet in the middle. So I'm going to end this like I've ended many episodes in the past, to tell you I know Easter's coming up here. A lot of people are going to be hanging out with their families. If you're in an argument with one of your family members that has a different political viewpoint or a different viewpoint on how society should be ran, just remember that they are most likely coming from a position of love. Okay. They want good outcomes for their own families, okay? Their own families, the community, maybe even you, who they're talking to directly, and maybe even in an aggravating way, an angry way. They might be yelling at you. You might be yelling at them. And you might be yelling at them just because you care. You want our society to be better. And that's a good thing, but we need to understand that if we can't accept that sometimes we're wrong, then our view is going to be that the other people are on the attack for some reason. Even if it's your own family member, they are ruining society. Okay. And if we take that view all the time to the end, we're creating enemies out of each other. Just literally, while the ruling class, okay, and when I say ruling class, I just mean all of the people who have actual power to make change in our society, at the high government level and the high corporate level, they have actual power to make changes in our society. They're winning. They're going to win. If you and your uncle, or you and your nephew are screaming at each other over Easter dinner, they're going to win. Whatever's going to happen, they're going to be in control of it, because we can't work together to help each other out in our own lives. So I just want you to try to have some compassion. Try to figure out what the other person wants. Try to understand their point of view, even if they're not going to change it and you don't believe that theirs is right. Try to understand why they have it, though, and what they would like the outcome to be, okay? Because the intentions are going to be what's important. And most people, they want our society to be doing well. They want themselves to have a better life. They want their families to have a better life, their friends, and even the community on a whole. Most people, that's what we desire. So I just want you to remember that. I really appreciate you listening. I'm hoping to do a lot more episodes here coming up, and I hope to see you soon. Until then, remember to always vote your conscience.